because we're harder on ourselves than they are on us, than we are on our.
Hello, here is a part 2 of the Tin Hat Talks with Shelly from There's No Place Like Home, and Debbie, the homeschool dietitian mom. Thank you for joining me again, ladies. We've been talking about how maybe things were before the flood and what kind of technology and stuff there was. Another thing that I wanted to kind of talk about was the Nephilim, the giants. So who wants to start there? I know a lot of people just do not know, and especially Bible believers have no idea what Genesis 6
some
is
big
about.
creation scientists that are very major that don't believe it. So that's part of it too. Like some of the most trusted creation resources that we have out right now don't really want to believe it. I think some people just don't want to believe it because it's just too weird for them.
Yeah.
Dr. Michael Heiser says that if it's in the Bible and it's weird, then it's important.
Mm-hmm. I agree with him on that one. I don't agree with him on everything, but I do agree with him on that one.
Yes.
His information about the Watchers and the angels coming down and Mount Hermon is amazing. That is wonderful information.
It is. Yeah. I've read his book, Reversing Hermon, and I've also read Unseen Realm, and I have his Angels and Demons books also. So
I have Unseen Realm,
again,
but I don't agree with everything. It's a little. I haven't been able to get through it. I think when I first started reading it, it was a little like weird for me at the time, and I keep meaning to get back to it. If you can believe, my mom bought that book for me. I had it on my wish list. The Unseen Realm.
Okay.
That one, it's like the Cloudeaters one. Like it started out, there were some things in it that just bothered me so much that I ended up not going back to it. But I'm glad you mentioned it because I did not realize until I was almost through part 1 of the Cloudeater book that was Stephen Quayle that was saying that stuff that I didn't agree with, and that Thomas Horn and now I'm reading his stuff and he's amazing. Like he is just so strong. He is just so smart. It's amazing.
Yes, they are.
The Unseen Realm. Yeah, I never finished that book. It's one I need to finish that one.
It's something that can just explain so much. Of course, in the last episode, Shelly talked about the Book of Enoch, and I'm not going to argue whether it should be canon or not either. But anybody living today should be able to pick up that book and go, oh, that's what's happening. Because it explains so much right from the very beginning. And it says at the beginning, it's written for the people in the last days. So I think it is an important, if you read anything other than the Bible, then you shouldn't have a problem reading.
It makes me think about commentaries, right? I think we all should. I think a lot of Christians need to stop reading commentaries because the Bible speaks for itself. Like when I tried to figure out, I know this is a little off topic, but when I tried to find what the Bible had to say about revolution, like the word revolution or the word rotation, and there's literally not a single word in the entire Bible. And the only one I did find was in a commentary. And I think that, when people say it's not part of the canon, it's like, well, neither are commentaries.
It's like the commentaries calling the dragons rhinoceroses.
Right. And even when we listen to our pastor learned from another guy who learned from another guy who learned from another guy. And who learned from another guy. And it's like,
you can't read it for yourself. Yeah.
But it's a good point that, we do need to be careful. We need to test it. But
well, and the sad thing is non-Christians know so much more than most Christians today because they don't have those mental roadblocks that so many Christians have got about what says in the Bible. And I've had so many people been in situations where people will say, well, the Bible says so and such. And I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. No, the Bible doesn't say that. Right. They've just been taught that that's what the Bible is. Like, no, I've spent before this year, I spent 3 years through the hoopla in the the media business and in the press, which was very interesting calling for a homeschool mom at the time. And one of my coworkers was gay. Okay. He was married to a man, and sweetest guy in the world. Just really, really sweet guy. He had been raised in the church, and he had been raped at a Christian camp, and very sadly. And nobody had believed him. And it just really, really sad. But he was just the sweetest guy. But, I kept just that communication open. And something was said one day about Sodom and Gomorrah. And I told him, I said, there is so much more to Sodom and Gomorrah than what most people think. And he turned around and he looked at me and with just the sweetest eyes and said, thank you. And I let him know I did not agree with his choices, his lifestyle choices and stuff, but I loved him to pieces. And we were able to have that conversation because I was able to, have that question in there, that there was a lot more going on, that God didn't ask for there to be complete genocides of nations, cities, for no good reason.
Because they're homosexuals.
Yeah, it wasn't just because of that. There was so much more going on, and Genesis 6 is the key to understanding those things.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, to me, what about the fact that they wanted to have sex with angels? I mean, come on, and they were men too. Like, I mean, it wasn't just that they were men; it's that they were angels. They weren't even men, right? They were. And then the fact that Lot wanted to give his daughter, like, take her instead.
Yeah.
I'm like, and then what the daughters did, right, went to him after they left, and it's like, yeah, there's so much more.
Yeah, absolutely, so much more. Okay, who do you guys think Zeus was? What do you think of Zeus?
I think that Zeus was very possibly a fallen angel. I'm not quite sure. I have heard people say that they believe that he may have been Lucifer, and I have heard others say Azazel. I haven't really, and some Semjaza, but I've also, I've seen people say that Azazel and Semjaza might be the same being. So, and that's why it's not what I think. That's just what I've read about, but it's not something that I've ever sat and thought about specifically which one. But I do believe that Zeus was a fallen angel.
Definitely. That we have fun in our family because Zeus had sex with everything. And this is not child friendly, so we'll just
I didn't know that. I
here.
never got into mythology. So
yeah, Zeus, he literally did. I mean, swans and
Cows.
It was, oh my goodness. I mean, he was, and we don't know how much of the stories, I believe that all of the myths and legends come from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we can usually find some grain. And in my book, I definitely follow some of those little grains of truth that are in like the names of the stars and things like that. And Zeus is just one of those figures that kind of proves today, what do we have? And we've been talking about as in the days of Noah, and there's nothing new under the sun. So what do we have today? We've got cloning. We've got, we have genetic mutation, genetic
manipulation.
We have CRISPR.
It's mainstream. I know they talked about that in my nutrition book.
Completely.
My textbook that I've been using, it's like a thing that it is a thing. And
yes,
used to be considered
the whole transhumanism
you were a whacked
thing.
out person if you thought that was happening. And now it's
so, maybe Zeus was actually having sex with all of these animals and stuff. I don't know. Or maybe he was doing gene therapy or mixing things up and making chimeras, because that's what it turned out to be, was creating these chimera monsters.
And they're openly doing that now, even.
Sorry.
Oh, no,
I was
that's
just going
okay.
to say, I've read that there's some controversy over in the book of Enoch when it tells us that the watchers also sinned against the animals, and so there is some controversy over how exactly did they sin against the animals. Did they sin against them by actually having intercourse with them, or did they sin against them by, as you were saying, making clones out of them, or doing some sort of experimentation or something that created these other beings like satyrs and centaurs and everything, that all of these half animal, half humans, minotaurs and, mermaids, all of this stuff. So
Yeah, well, they're doing that now. They're having Madonna, okay, years ago, 15, 20 years ago, probably came out with a book that had bestiality in it.
really?
Yes, and there's a movement right now of people that want to make it normal,
I'm not
okay,
surprised.
to have sexual relationship with your animals. Yeah. So I don't have any problem believing that was going on then.
Well, I know in Oklahoma, it is actually it's legal now, according to the Oklahoma legislature, to hunt Bigfoot.
Oh, okay,
So
that's a little
the
different. Thank you.
Oklahoma
That was a little better topic than we were.
Yeah, that was a little better. I'm moving on. I'm moving on. So no, because I think that could very well be where Bigfoot came from. Could be part of this. There's also been sightings of like satyrs, like creatures and stuff in Oklahoma. We've got, and dog man is a very old Native American thing, and we've met people. we have 10 out people that come visit us on a regular basis, so they tell us about their sightings.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, there is. And we have a fella just south of us in Kansas. Or Texas. We're not very far from Kansas and Texas here in the Panhandle. And he is actually clones. And it was in the newspaper, he cloned a cow after it was 3 days old.
No,
dead.
it was 8
dead.
days
It was
dead.
dead.
Oh, 8 days dead?
It
was dead.
8 days.
Oh yeah,
It had been dead. It had been dead.
You told me about that. I know.
Yeah, I thought it was 3 days. My husband is.
Well, I thought you said 3 days old, so I just wanted.
Yeah, no, I mean dead. Old.
Like it was dead.
Yeah, I mean that's gross.
Speaking of books, I also read this other book where the main character, it was a futuristic book, and the main characters, he met his friend, and there's a lot of other stuff that went on, but this one thing that happened is he met his friend at a football game, and I remember him thinking his friend was off, like there was something odd about him, and then he found out a couple of weeks later that his friend had died previously to that day he met him. So he was already dead, and they did something to animate him or whatever so that he could, I know. And this is an older book too. That's like fiction books. I tell you, I think a lot of people write fiction books because they know that if they write a true story that people are going to either try to censor it or think he's just really weird. But if you just write a fiction book, you can get away with it. There's a lot of truth
information
in a lot of these fiction
books.
Well,
I know I'm trying to figure out how to use the word so that I'm not monetized anyway, but I don't want to get kicked off or have the video deleted. The Tartarian truthers call them shmishmations. So I think you know who I'm talking about, right? Okay. Yeah. They actually believe they are descended from like Ra and the Egyptian gods. Those people that are high up in there, they do.
Well, that really brings a whole new level to the idea of royal bloodlines, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? And I do believe that they all believe that. I think that they, and it could be. It could be.
The funny thing is that there's if you've heard of L.A. Marzulli, and I know I'm fairly certain that both of you have because we've talked about him before. He just wrote these books about the Nephilim and about finding these skulls in Peru that are like very elongated skulls, and just a lot of very weird things about the skulls that are different from human skulls, like the parietal plates and everything. But if you actually look at some of these, what we call the elite or the powers that be, and not necessarily the things that the people that you were just talking about, although I'm sure that they're the members of them, if you look at some of them from the side, they have elongated heads.
Wow,
So
I'm gonna have to start looking for that.
yes, so it's very strange. And
That's
actually, I'm reading a book now that's talking about all of that, what you were talking about, Dawnita. It's by Gary Wayne. It's the Genesis 6 conspiracy.
I love
And
his stuff. He is
yeah,
so good.
Yes, you are gonna write
fascinating.
all this stuff down, right? Because
I'm
actually, I
writing
was
it
just
down.
one of the things I was thinking about when you said dog man is I don't remember where it came from, but I remember all of a sudden I started thinking about like Harry Potter and how they have wolves, you know, the werewolves, and how the werewolves are, again, it's one of those, there's elements of truth to the legends. And there was a video, and I've seen it more than once, showing this dead thing that looks like a dog man.
Wow.
And it just does not look like it's fake to me. I'm sorry. Like, and there, I've
Yeah.
seen so many things that have come from so many different ways. And the Bible says on the testimony, right, of 2 or 3 witnesses, and
Well,
you know,
and
babies that are
I
born that
used
look like little
to-
reptiles. And
Oh
have
yeah,
you seen
and
any of those?
we've got the big pig farms out here, and then we see pictures of, you know, baby pig mixtures that are just so sad.
Really? Oh my God.
Yeah, it's just so sad.
There's definitely something to
But
be about living where you do, huh? You see all kinds of stuff that,
we see all kinds of stuff
although
out
Bigfoot's
here.
famous here too, you know.
Yeah, Bigfoot's kind of, I mean, that's everywhere. I mean, it's got different names in different nations and stuff.
For
But
years, I've told my husband that when all of our kids are grown, that we are going to get an RV and travel the country and join the BFRO, the Bigfoot Field Research Organization, just because I find the whole thing so fascinating. And I know I probably will never do that, but that's like a joke. And my daughter even got me like some Bigfoot decals for the back of my van that my husband did not let me put on. But you know, yeah, and the thing is that I think that if we look at, you know, things like Bigfoot and the dog man, or even like satyrs and centaurs, they are often just blown off as being mythological folklore, you know, just stories. But last night my daughter was reading to me a book about mermaids, and if you look just at mermaids alone, there are stories of mermaids worldwide from ancient cultures all over the place. And so that's one thing, you know, so many, we see so many things tied together that we tend to look at as being not real, as being kind of fairy tales. But if you actually look at the ancient cultures, that they all consistently had stories of this. Or like I was talking about the one time about the what they call reptilians. There are stories of beings like that all over the world, mermaids all over the world. Several cultures have stories of satyrs or fawns, whatever it is that you want to call them. And even in the Bible, I think Mount Seir, Seir, is associated with goat people. So I think that a lot of times, like you were talking about, knowledge puffs you up and you think that you know everything. And I think that's why so many people just brush these things off, because it makes them uncomfortable to think that these things could possibly be true, and that they don't really know everything. They don't know as much as they think they do.
well, we've been made fun of, and we've been taught that these are fairy tales for children, and they're not. Well, they weren't written as fairy tales for children.
Right.
I mean, even the Grimm brothers, that was not written for children. None of that stuff was written for children. And if you look at the old, just the really old stuff from like the Dark Ages and whatever, you know, their books, their tapestries, there's just depictions of all kinds of creatures, weird, strange creatures. This is just coming out of their imagination, and they're supposedly scraping by, trying to survive, don't have indoor bathrooms or washing machines, and they're wasting their time making these elaborate pieces of art of something just from their imagination. No, guys.
Oh, that reminds me of another book that I used for that research, is that these cave paintings that you find, and that was another aspect of the archaeology, is some of these go way back to like, you know, 100, 200 AD. And the accuracy, okay? And when they first discovered dinosaur bones, and they first, you know, they had limited amounts, and they started trying to build the dinosaurs, they didn't look anything like a dinosaur. They looked funky. And yet hundreds, thousands of years ago, people were drawing these perfectly accurate, or making tapestries, speaking of tapestries, or carving, like 1600, places in Italy and France, carvings of these animals look exactly like it took them 200 years to create dinosaurs that look like that.
Right. And the size differences, like in India and in Egypt, they have the size differences in between the people. And it's like, oh, well, it's a child or whatever. It's like, there's very obvious things going on in a lot of those depictions, that there are small adults and there are huge adults. And yeah.
They're still seeing dragons and dinosaurs in Congo. That's one of the places where there are still sightings.
I would tell my kids that all the time. Yeah.
Have you ever, one thing Ken Ham said once that cracks me up, is he said, you'd have to have one person everywhere on the entire earth saying to each other, no, I don't see a dinosaur there, to know for sure that they're extinct.
True.
Get it? Like everybody with a walkie-talkie or whatever, or TV or phone would have to be like every single place on the earth. You would have to be standing there going, nope, don't see a dinosaur there. Yeah, he said that was years ago, but I got a kick out of that.
Yeah.
My husband is in the background giving his 2 cents on everything that he can't hear. That you guys,
he's so cute. I like him doing that. He's so cute how he does that.
I've got my headphones on so he cannot hear. He's only hearing my side of the conversation, and he's adding his 2 cents in on everything. It's great that we're on the same page with all of this stuff. That
I know,
makes it a lot of fun.
Speaking of passion, I can talk about this stuff. Trying to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing with my business or whatever.
Yeah. And the thing is that like I told you my daughter was reading the mermaid book to me last night. And actually, right before she started reading the mermaid book, she was reading the Bible to me. And it was where they were talking about how the people were worshiping the god Dagon. And I said to her, I'm pretty sure that was like a pagan fish god. And then so she gets this mermaid book, opens up the first page, and what is it? There he is, right on the first page. And it said he was a Babylonian god.
Oh, so it even said Dagon? Like it even gave him the name and everything?
It gave the Babylonian name for him. But if you look up in other places, it is Dagon, that he's the fish god. So it was just, and it was.
That makes me think of like, did Nineveh? Because I love the I love the VeggieTales version of Nineveh.
They put all that in there, the fish slapping and stuff.
I know, but it's like, did they worship Dagon? Think about that for a minute. Okay, I mean, if they did, he would have smelled fishy. And if he smelled fishy, then they might have listened to him because he smelled fishy. You know what I mean? Like, literally, is that, I've never done that research, but did they? Wow. It was pretty bad. I don't blame him. I would have run the other way too.
I think they had some insight whenever they did that. Well, and unfortunately, Christians don't take this stuff seriously. And a lot of them either think it's one way or the other. They either think, oh, that's evil and we need to stay away from it, or, oh, it's harmless and we can do whatever we want to with it. And there's danger in that, like Starbucks. I have a real problem with Starbucks because of the two-tailed mermaid goddess that there are huge statues of around the world, and they've got her on all of their stuff in the top of their building, and Christians are walking in there and going and getting a cup of coffee and collecting the coffee cups, and I love them. It's like I've got friends that go and they love the coffee and stuff, and I had to finally, once I realized I had to draw the line. We don't have one of those out here. But last time that I was in a town where there was a Starbucks, I told the friend that I was with, I said, I'm sorry, but I just cannot go to Starbucks anymore because of the goddess on their building. And she's like, I have quit going too. It made me feel so much better.
I never realized what it was on there, but oddly enough, I wish I had this mermaid book sitting next to me right now, because on the same page as the other one, my 9-year-old daughter who was reading it to me, there was a drawing and she said, hey, look, she said, I know that. She said, is that from, and I forget, she said some fast food place. And I said, no, I don't think it is. And then she's like, no, Starbucks. And so I looked it up because I didn't know. Sure enough, it was the two-tailed fish thing. My 9-year-old daughter noticed it and recognized it as
Isn't that
being the star
wonderful?
god. I never did. I didn't even know what it was. And
Didn't
I was like,
even.
Kenzie, you are right. I had
Yeah.
no, so it's just funny that we're talking about this because just last night, this is right at the kitchen table. We're discussing this. I'm discussing this with my 9-year-old. So
That's just wonderful. I think the Lord is opening people's eyes. I know I felt that way. We've seen people in our community that are becoming more and more awake and open to these types of things. And the children, especially, they're so much smarter than we are sometimes. You know, we
Mhm.
have to
Like you said, with
convince
the
them
faith of a
to
child,
not
right?
believe. Yeah, they
we
know.
notice things. Yeah.
Yes. And it's amazing. I just love that.
Yeah. And right now, though, I'm having like a lot of people have been, when I discuss things like this that are, that are, we can't necessarily call mermaids biblical, but it is related to what we are talking about, with the Nephilim and everything like that. But when I bring things up like this, people will say, well, it's not a gospel issue. And so that's why a lot of people, they will just completely not want to talk about it because it's not a gospel issue.
Yeah, and this has
And
been something that's been going on ever since I even started talking about creation versus evolution.
Jesus
It's the
said
same
that it
thing.
would
It's been like most
be
people just
the
don't want to
same
get deep.
as it was in the days of Noah. And if they do not understand what it was like in the days of Noah and what Noah and his family were having to deal with while they were building that ark, then they are not going to understand what is going on around them today. And
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And even when it comes to, it says that he will send a strong delusion. Well, if you are refusing, if you are having tunnel vision and you refuse to take a look at what is happening around you, aren't you much more likely to fall for that strong
all
delusion?
for that.
If you don't
Well,
look at
and
what's going on around you.
we like to talk about spiritual warfare today. It's kind of become a key word among Christian circles, spiritual warfare. But I don't think most of them, if you don't understand Genesis 6 and if you haven't read the book of Enoch, you don't understand what the spirits even are.
Yeah, and there's
Right.
and that,
Don't
Ephesians
even
6,
understand what you're dealing with.
Ephesians 6 is like, it talks about levels of angels. And
Mhm.
they're not even all angels, right? They're principalities. Like most people don't even know what that is. I don't recommend confronting a principality. I've read stories of people who did that and they got hurt really bad. Like you don't want to mess, but you do. But yeah, people don't understand, and you can get frustrating when you think, oh, my pastor's going to talk about spiritual warfare, and then they barely touch the surface.
Yeah.
Again, and it does go back to that
Mhm.
whole, they don't understand that we don't just have demons. Demons, when I think of demons, I
They
think
don't
about
even
Jesus.
understand what a demon was.
Right, a disembodied spirit that wants to be in a body, and that's why when they begged Jesus, please put us in the pigs,
Mhm.
because they didn't want to,
Yeah.
And being able to differentiate between a fallen angel and a demon.
and even
Right.
we don't know
And
that
the
perfectly,
Nephilim
like
too,
which is
because the
which
Nephilim
sometimes.
are the living, they were the living vessels, the Nephilim when they were still alive, and it is their spirits that are that are the demons now.
That are the demons. Yeah.
Yes.
That's what I've
Yeah.
read.
Yeah. So they know so
And
much more than we do because they probably did live to be 800-900 years old.
yeah.
Yeah.
Timothy Alberino goes over a lot of this stuff in his
Is he the
birthright
one that
book.
died?
No, I hope not. At least not that I know
Well, because
of.
there were a couple people that, I mean, like for example,
Rob Skiba
Chris
passed
Putnam.
away.
Have you ever read his Spiritual Worldview book? That is such a good book.
No.
Spiritual Worldview is an amazing book that he wrote.
Okay.
He died at like 50.
Oh.
And then there was a guy that wasn't, maybe not Timothy Apple-Reno, but someone who was a similar like thing, and then they were connected with Skywatch. They died.
Oh.
And there's a lot of deaths.
You know
of
when
people
that was?
I have to look it up. I thought it was
Okay,
Timothy
yeah.
Apple.
Hope not.
Gosh, I don't know how I would look that up.
But that's okay. You
Well,
don't have
I know
to.
that there were those twins, Mark and because I've got one of the books from one of the twins. I can't remember what their last names were. We'll find out and I'll put all that information in in the description. This has been so much fun. Again, I think we could like talk forever about this kind of stuff. I hope that we can do it again. I really appreciate you guys coming and doing this with me. And thank you so much for being involved.
I will definitely look